The beginning of this story is something I never thought I'd have to recount. It's unsettling, to say the least. It started last week. I live with 4 roommates, Jess, Riley, Danny, and Max. Riley is the one who I'm pretty sure is dead. But for some reason, my other roommates insist that she's fine, that I'm overreacting. At first, I thought they were right. Riley has always been introverted, the type to shut down when things get overwhelming. Sometimes when she wanted to avoid socializing, she'd pretend to be asleep. We called it her hibernation mode. But this time she's been in hibernation mode for over a week. Her eyes are wide open. Her skin has turned a grayish white, and there's a dark purplish tinge creeping along her fingertips. Her body has bloated slightly, and yesterday I swear I saw a fly land on her eye and not fly away. She hasn't changed out of her yellow hoodie and pajama pants since last Monday, and she smells not like sweat or body odor. She smells like a corpse, like meat that's been left out too long. I keep telling myself there has to be a logical explanation, but no matter how much I rationalize it, I can't unsee the way she's decomposing in real time. But the worst part, nobody else will admit it. I should back up. This all started last Sunday night, the night we hit the cat. We weren't drunk, not wasted at least, just a little buzzed, messing around, playing music too loud. I was the one driving. Danny was in the passenger seat and the others were crammed in the back when I felt the impact in my hands before I even registered what happened. I slammed the brakes, but it was too late. The cat, a small black-furred blur, lay still in the road. Before we could react, an old woman appeared from the shadows, stepping out from the trees lining the road. Her face was sunken, her eyes black as coal. She didn't yell, didn't scream, she just looked at us. Then in a low, rasping voice, she muttered something. The words were foreign, but they chilled me to the bone. I don't think it was English, I don't think it was any language I've ever heard. Riley, Mum, you should have kept your cat inside. We weren't trying to hit it. The woman didn't blink. She just kept muttering those harsh, guttural words, and then, without another sound, she turned and walked back into the darkness. Danny, creepy old hag. We laughed about it later, played it off like it was some weird witchy lady spouting nonsense. I should have known better. I should have known she cursed us. Or more specifically, she cursed Riley. The next morning, Riley was already sitting in the living room when I woke up. She was slumped in the armchair by the window, wrapped in her yellow hoodie. I figured she must have fallen asleep there. I made coffee. "Morning, Riley." She didn't answer. I glanced over. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring through me. "You good?" Silence. I waited for a sarcastic remark, a grunt, anything. But she didn't move. "Max, Riley's got the flu. She's been feeling off since last night. Let her rest." I hesitated but nodded. It made sense, right? Just a fever or something. Except she didn't move the entire day. By nightfall, she was still in the same position. "Dude, are you sure she's okay?" "Danny, she's sick, man. Leave her alone." By the 3rd day, the smell hit me first. It was faint at first, like mildew, damp clothes left in the washer too long, but by the afternoon it had become something worse, something rotten. I walked past Riley's chair and nearly gagged. "Jesus, Riley, you need a shower." She didn't react, not a blink, not a twitch. "Jess, don't be an ass. She's obviously going through something. What, like a mental breakdown?" "Jess, I don't know, just let her be." But letting her be meant letting her sit there, unmoving, rotting in her hoodie. I couldn't do it. It got worse. Someone started moving her. On Thursday morning, I came out of my room and found her at the kitchen table. Her body was leaned back in a chair, head tilted at an awkward angle, mouth slightly open. The smell was unbearable. Yet Jess and Max talked to her like normal. "Max, want some eggs, Riley?" No response. I watched her closely, tried to see if she was breathing, blinking, anything. Nothing. "Jess, quit staring. You're creeping her out. She's dead." And yet the more I tried to explain it, the more they insisted I was wrong. I felt like I was coming apart at the seams. By the seventh day, I had enough. That night, I waited until the house was quiet. Then I grabbed Riley's stiff, bloated body and dragged her outside. I shoved her into the trunk of my car and drove out to the cliffs. There was no ceremony, no hesitation. I pushed the body over the edge. It tumbled into the darkness below. Gone. And for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. This morning, Danny didn't wake up. I walked into the living room, and there he was, sitting on the couch, controller in his lap, staring at the TV screen. At first, I thought he was just zoning out, but then I saw his fingers weren't moving. His chest wasn't rising. His skin looked pale. Jess, morning, Danny. Danny didn't respond. She didn't notice. I took a step back, heart pounding. It's happening again. One by one, they're dying. And I'm the only one who sees it.
It all started when a group of teenagers decided to play Truth or Dare at a weekend gathering. The usual mix of popular kids, Mia, Jane, Max and Jake, were there, along with the so-called nerds like Mari, Evelyn and Ethan. As the game carried on with laughter and wild dares, Ethan sat in a corner, nose buried in a book filled with eerie folklore and unsettling tales. He wasn't really paying attention, assuming no one would bother picking him, but then...
I choose Ethan, Truth or Dare. What? Yeah, I pick you, so Truth or Dare.
Ethan rolled his eyes. He should have known better than to think he'd be left alone. He glanced at Jake's mocking expression and suddenly felt irritated.
What's wrong, nerd? Too scared to answer?
A mix of frustration and embarrassment bubbled inside Ethan.
Fine, I'll take a dare.
The room fell silent. It seemed no one had expected that answer.
All right then. I dare you to spend the night in the abandoned house in the woods.
The group exchanged uneasy glances. The house was infamous. Stories claimed something, or someone, still lingered there. A girl, neither fully alive nor truly dead, with hollowed-out eyes and a skeletal frame. They called her Sylvie the Forgotten.
But... no backing out. You chose Dare, remember? Or are you scared?
Jake laughed, and the others giggled along. Ethan clenched his fists.
Fine, I'll do it.
The next evening, Ethan prepared himself. He packed a few essentials, his phone, flashlight and a snack before heading into the woods. The house was exactly as the stories described. Small, worn down, yet oddly intact despite years of abandonment. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. At first, everything seemed normal. Dusty furniture, cobwebs, a dimly lit interior, but then a figure stood in the doorway of the adjacent room. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. As he moved closer, the details became clearer. A tall girl, her form a blend of human and skeletal remains. She wore an old-fashioned black dress, a crimson ribbon in her chestnut hair. Her gloves were pristine white, but her face had no eyes. Just endless black voids, and yet she wasn't horrifying. There was something strangely beautiful about her, an eerie elegance.
You're late. The tea's already cold.
She turned toward him, tilting her head slightly. Ethan's pulse quickened. He followed her gaze to a table with 2 cups of untouched tea. Slowly, she gestured for him to sit.
Are you Sylvie the Forgotten?
Instead, she lifted a cup and took a silent sip. Ethan hesitated before sitting across from her, staring into his cup.
The dust is everywhere, yet no one notices.
I don't understand.
Sometimes understanding isn't necessary.
She turned her eyeless gaze toward him. Despite his fear, he remained seated.
Wait, you were expecting me? Did you make this tea for me?
Perhaps.
A chill ran down Ethan's spine.
Who are you really? And why do they call you Sylvie the Forgotten?
For a moment she was silent, staring at the broken clock on the wall. Then she spoke softly.
Once I had a life. a home, emotions, but the world has a cruel way of erasing what it doesn't understand.
What do you mean?
They chased me, cornered me, and then they set me ablaze.
Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His grip on the teacup weakened, and it slipped from his hands, shattering against the wooden floor.
Why would they?
Some stories are lost to time, some names are buried with the past, and some souls never fully leave.
Her fingers, ghostly and frail, brushed against his hand briefly before pulling away.
I became dust, a shadow of a girl who once was.
Ethan wanted to scream, to cry out against the unfairness of it all, but he simply sat there staring at her. Morning light seeped through the cracked windows. The dust, barely noticeable before, seemed to glow in the sunlight. Ethan's vision blurred. He felt himself slipping away as Sylvie whispered her final words.
The night will pass, the sun will rise, life will fade, and dust will remain.
Her faint, eerie smile lingered in his mind as the world around him went dark. When the others arrived the next morning, they found no trace of Ethan, only a broken cup and 2 untouched cups of tea, slowly turning to dust. And if one listened closely, they could hear a voice in the wind whispering,
I will remain, just as the dust does.
The desert night stretched out before Rachel Holloway. It swallowed the lonely ribbon of asphalt known as Route 46. A chill wind howled outside her car, a mournful soundtrack to her late-night drive from Flagstaff to Phoenix. Rachel shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty highway ahead. Rachel checked her watch. 11:58 p.m. Almost home. Suddenly a flicker in the rearview mirror caught her eye. A pair of pinpricks of light like the eyes of a predator emerged from the darkness behind her. A car, its headlights off, was tailing her, hugging her rear bumper. The dark car continued its relentless pursuit, a phantom clinging to her tail. It mimicked her every move, speeding up when she did, slowing down when she slowed down. Rachel's mind raced, her thoughts a tangled mess of fear and confusion. Who was behind the wheel of that car? What did they want? She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles turning white. The car behind her remained eerily silent. No headlights pierced the darkness, no engine noise broke the silence of the desert night. It was as if the car itself were a phantom, a creature of the night. Terror gnawed at the edges of Rachel's composure. Just when her hope began to dwindle, a beacon in the darkness appeared. Last chance gas, it read, the letters partially obscured by the dust-laden wind. Rachel's foot slammed on the accelerator. She veered off the highway, the roar of her engine echoing in the stillness of the night. The car with the extinguished headlights followed suit, its presence as unwavering as ever. Dust billowed in their wake, creating a hazy curtain behind them. The neon glow of the last chance gas sign grew larger as Rachel approached. The station, a lonely outpost on the edge of nowhere, was bathed in an eerie, ethereal glow. As Rachel pulled up to the gas pump, her heart hammered in her chest. She glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. The mysterious car had vanished. Relief, fleeting and fragile, washed over her. Rachel hurried into the gas station, her heart still pounding. An old man, his face etched with wrinkles, sat behind the counter reading a newspaper. He looked up as she entered, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Just need to fill up," Rachel stammered, her voice trembling. The old man grunted and went back to his paper. She quickly paid for her gas and returned to her car. The air felt heavy, laden with an unsettling energy. As Rachel pulled back onto the deserted highway, her headlights cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but the empty road ahead. She glanced nervously in her rearview mirror, half expecting to see the phantom car emerge from the shadows, but there was nothing. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The silence of the desert night pressed in on Rachel, amplifying her fear. She was almost home, just a few miles more, and then it happened. The headlights, two piercing beams of light, blinding in their intensity, suddenly appeared behind her. Rachel cried out, her car swerving violently as she struggled to maintain control. The blinding lights grew closer, consuming her vision. Her car skidded on the asphalt, the tires losing their grip, and then darkness.